Let's talk about a ship, but not just any ship. We're talking about a single vessel that was so advanced, so powerful, that the moment it hit the water, it made every other battleship on the entire planet completely and utterly obsolete. This is the story of the HMS Dreadnought.
All right, here's how we're going to break it down. We'll start with the long, quiet era where nothing changed. Then, we'll dive into the absolute explosion of new technology that followed. We'll look at the powerful but deeply flawed ships that came right before the main event, then get into the genius behind the Dreadnought's design, and finally, we'll see the massive shockwave it sent across the globe.
So, to really get your head around how much of a game-changer the Dreadnought was, you first have to understand just how stagnant, how stuck in the mud naval technology had been for a very, very long time.
I mean, this quote just says it all, doesn't it? Seriously? Think about that. A sailor from the age of Shakespeare could be magically transported 200 years into the future and still know how to do his job on the most advanced warship of 1805. The fundamentals, the wood, the sails, the cannons were all basically the same.
For centuries, the big dog on the seas was the ship of the line. It was a floating fortress made of wood, pushed around by the wind. And the whole game was about lining up your ships side by side and just blasting the enemy with a massive wall of cannon fire. That was it. That was the playbook for 300 years.
And then the 19th century showed up and just tore that playbook to shreds. All of a sudden, it was like a dam broke. A relentless flood of new inventions changed absolutely everything, turning the world's navies into a high-stakes, real-time science experiment.
And you can just see the insane pace of it all right here. I mean, look how fast this happens. First, you get explosive shells that make wooden ships a death trap. That forces the invention of iron armor. Then screw propellers come along and make ships way more agile. Then you get turrets that can spin around and shoot in any direction. It's this incredible domino effect where every new invention makes the last one obsolete, sometimes in just a matter of years.
This weapon, this was the spark that lit the fire. See, before this, cannonballs just poked holes in ships, but a shell that explodes on impact, that could rip a wooden hull apart and start raging fires. All of a sudden, your mighty ship of the line wasn't a fortress anymore, it was a tinderbox waiting for a match. Armor wasn't a luxury anymore, it was a necessity.
So, after all this chaotic innovation, things finally settled down a bit, and we got what's known as the pre-Dreadnought battleship. For a very brief moment in time, this was the most powerful weapon system on the planet. But it was a machine built on compromises, and those compromises were about to get brutally exposed.
So the thinking behind these ships seemed pretty sound. You'd have a couple of massive 12-inch guns for long-range slugfests. Then you'd pack the ship with a whole bunch of smaller, faster-firing guns for closer ranges. It was trying to be a jack-of-all-trades, ready for anything. But the real world had other plans.
And here's the test. The Russo-Japanese War. Suddenly, naval battles are being fought from miles away, way further than anyone had really planned for. And at those insane distances, a huge problem popped up. When all your guns are firing at once, it's impossible to tell the splashes from your little guns from the splashes from your big guns. You couldn't aim properly. All those medium guns were just dead weight, making a lot of noise but not hitting a thing.
And this is where the man of the hour steps in. Britain's first Sea Lord, the absolutely brilliant and relentless Admiral Sir John Fisher. He looked at what happened in that war, and he didn't see a problem. He saw an answer. A simple, brutal, and revolutionary formula for a new kind of warship.
Fisher's logic was just so clean, so undeniable. Okay, step one. The only thing that matters anymore is hitting the other guy from really, really far away. Step two. If that's true, then all those medium guns are totally useless. Get rid of them. Step three. The faster ship gets to decide where the fight happens. And that led them to the killer conclusion, build a ship with nothing but big guns, all the same size so you can easily track their shells and then make it faster than any other battleship on the planet.
And here it is. This is the revolution in black and white. Just look at the firepower. The previous class of British battleship had 4 big guns. The Dreadnought had 10. 10! That is a staggering jump in long-range firepower. And then there's the speed, a full 3 knots faster, which in naval terms is a massive advantage. This wasn't just a step up, it was a whole new staircase.
Now, that extra speed wasn't magic. It came from another revolutionary piece of tech, the steam turbine. The old engines were basically giant, heavy pistons chugging up and down. Turbines were way more elegant. They spun, kind of like a jet engine. That made them lighter, more powerful, and way more reliable. It was the key that unlocked that battle-winning speed.
21.6 knots. That was her real speed. What that number really means is that the Dreadnought could outrun any battleship afloat. It could chase them down, or it could run away. It meant it chose the range of the fight, forcing every other ship in the world to play by its rules.
So in 1906, this incredible ship is launched, and the effect wasn't gradual. It was instant, it was dramatic, and it was global.
I mean, really think about that question for a second. What happens when, in a single day, the entire measure of naval power, the one that has defined empires for centuries, is completely reset?
And here's the wild part. The first and biggest victim of the HMS Dreadnought was the British Royal Navy itself. Britain had this enormous fleet of 61 battleships, the ultimate symbol of its global power. And with this one launch, it basically made its own fleet obsolete. A single dreadnought could sink any of them before they could even get in range.
So the naval arms race that had been simmering between countries like Britain and Germany didn't just heat up, it was completely reset. The scoreboard was now Britain 1, everybody else 0. It was like the world's most expensive poker game, and Britain had just laid down a card that made everyone else's hand worthless. Now, everybody had to start building dreadnoughts from scratch.
And that's really the final crucial takeaway. The HMS Dreadnought was an absolute marvel of engineering, a triumph of logic and learning from the battlefield. But it was also like throwing gasoline on the fire of global tensions. By hitting the reset button on naval power, it kicked off a frantic, paranoid arms race that made the world a much more unstable, much